Sanjeev Goenka Group presents CNN News 18 Indian of the Year 2023. And the nominees for the sports category are Sunil Chhetri, Shubman Gill, Nikhat Zareen, Satvik and Chirag, Neeraj Chopra. Vote now on www.indianoftheyear.com and choose the Indians conquering the world.
Good evening, you're watching The Right Stand here on CNN News 18 with me, Poonam Burde. Let's begin with some of the highlights of the day. And of course, the biggest talking point that has been on the lips of everyone around the world is Virat Kohli scoring his 50th ODI century during the World Cup semi-final against New Zealand. The match is still underway, but this was a feat that was achieved by Virat Kohli in Wankhede in Mumbai. With his 50th ton, Virat Kohli has now broken Sachin Tendulkar's record of the most ODI centuries. He bowed down to his idol right after he scored that century, Sachin Tendulkar. He broke his records. Congratulatory messages, of course, pouring in from across not just the cricketing world. Prime Minister Modi too, congratulating him for this historic feat. Prime Minister Modi today also launched a 24,000 crore Pradhan Mantri particularly vulnerable tribal groups mission. This happened on the birth anniversary of tribal icon Birsa Munda. It happened in Jharkhand this morning. The mission focuses on the delivery of 11 interventions under 9 ministries for the holistic development of 75 PVTGs across 18 states and union territories of this country. This scheme aims to improve socio-economic conditions of the vulnerable tribals. It is expected to benefit around 28 lakh people across the country. ISRO has launched robotics challenge for aspirants that are interested in space missions. There's a cash prize that has been announced of 5 lakh rupees as well. ISRO has invited applications from youths for innovative ideas and designs of robotic rovers for future missions not just on moon but on other planetary bodies as well. The aim of this initiative is to create unique opportunities for academia and for the industry in the space robotics sector. Now, on to our top focus on The Right Stand. That is the Israel-Hamas war. Now, it's been 5 weeks since Israel began its assault against Hamas. The fate of Gaza's best-equipped Al-Shifa hospital has now become the focus of international alarm. The world is watching this ground offensive because of the worsening conditions in that facility. Today, the IDF stormed into the hospital. They've been standing guard outside the gates of this hospital for a few days now. But today, they stormed in a bid to unearth Hamas's terror factories. The Israeli military called the operation a precise and targeted operation against Hamas in a specified area. But there are testimonies that are now coming to the fore from inside the hospital of doctors, of patients, of family members of patients who are inside, and those are heartbreaking. These stories are perhaps the reason why we're not seeing some of these allies of Israel perhaps change their tone. Before we get to that, here's what the ground offensive looked like today. IDF intensified its crackdown on Hamas. The troops entered Gaza's largest hospital, Al-Shifa. They said that there are no frictions with civilians or patients inside and they had evacuated everyone. Several claims have been made. IDF said that they had delivered medical equipment and incubators while they were at the hospital. They also then said that Hamas operatives were hiding inside these hospitals, inside Al-Shifa as well. They were operating from there, which is why it was important for them to storm in. The IDF also claimed that they are carrying out precise operation against Hamas and the civilians are not going to be caught in crossfire. They said that they had found weapons and that the terror infrastructure was very much present in hospitals like the Al-Shifa. They also said that Hamas has held hostages that are captive in these Gaza hospitals. They got us a report from one such hospital yesterday as well. Now, Israel's closest allies, Canada and the United States, two countries that one of the first few countries to come out and defend Israel and say that their right to self-defense was paramount. They too have now come out and cautioned Israel. They've warned them from laying siege on hospitals in Gaza. Canada perhaps came out with the strictest criticism today. Justin Trudeau said that we urge Israel to exercise maximum restraint. The United States said that we don't support striking of hospitals, a caution tone there being taken. Canada then went on to say that we do not want babies to be killed. That must end. To which US also then said that hospitals and patients must be protected as well. That is something that Israel has to look into. Canada then also went on to say that we're talking about hostages, but it's not just Israel. Hamas also needs to do their bit. Hamas must stop using civilians as shields, and only then will this fighting or hospitals being caught in the crossfire will stop. United States also sent out a cautionary tale. They said that Hamas is using hospitals as military bases, and that really needs to stop. We do not support striking of hospitals. You cannot be making hospitals a battlefield, was the clear message. Hamas should release the 200-odd hostages, is what Canada also went on to say. The United States said that these hostages that are being held captive in hospitals must be released soon. But the criticism that came to the fore, especially from the Canadian side, did meet with an equal rebuttal from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He minced no words. He rebuked his critics, specifically Justin Trudeau. Benjamin Netanyahu said that it's not Israel but Hamas that is deliberately targeting civilians. Israel is keeping civilians out of harm's way, and it's Hamas that are using them as shields, is what the clear message of the IDF and the Israeli Prime Minister is. Israel is providing humanitarian corridor. There are safe zones to civilians that have been set up, so we are not the ones putting them in the line of fire. Israel said that it is Hamas, not Israel, that should be held accountable for killings of civilians in Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu also said that Hamas is targeting civilians while hiding behind them. Forces of civilization must back Israel in defeating Hamas, and this barbarism must stop. That was the clear message that Benjamin Netanyahu sent out, not just to Justin Trudeau but to all other critics who have been questioning of whether these are excesses coming to the fore from the Israeli side. Now, Hamas so far has claimed that they have no role to play in the attacks that took place in Gaza hospitals, that killing of innocent civilians, or that they are not being used as shields, and it really is Israel that's the oppressor in this particular case. But here are some facts, some independent ones at that, not made by the IDF, that counter this claim. There are anecdotal and other evidence that do suggest that Hamas and other factions have been using civilian objects, including hospitals and schools. There have been instances like this in the past. Some journalists in 2014 had encountered armed men inside one such hospital on the Gaza Strip. There are sightings of senior Hamas leaders inside the Al-Shifa hospital on multiple occasions. They were documented as well. Back in 2014, during the conflict, the UN reported weapons were found inside 2 schools that are run by UN, which are not very far away from these hospitals. There have been numerous reports of Palestinian armed factions in Gaza that have fired rockets and other weapons from close to protected civilian locations. So this is not the first time that Hamas has used civilians as human shields. It continues, which gives Israel the justification for their ground offensive. But is there a line? Should that line be crossed? And are allies now changing tune? Before we get into that debate, let's take a look at what exactly has transpired so far.
Hello, Moto.
Joining me on this broadcast, Sushant Sureen, Strategic Affairs Expert and Senior Fellow at the ORF, Adam Scott Bellows, CEO of Israel Innovation Fund, Ibrahim Abu Ahmad, Director Alumni Relations at Robeson, a peace activist, joins me on this broadcast, and Edward P. Joseph, faculty at the Johns Hopkins University, also joining me here on this debate. Let me begin by asking Mr. Ibrahim Abu Ahmad, you know, we're talking about hospitals that are being in the middle of the entire crossfire here. We're seeing the plight of the patients there, of civilians there. can you deny that Hamas has been using these hospitals as their headquarters, as their factories to stash their arms and arsenal? Mr. Ahmed? I believe, sir, you've muted yourself. If you could just unmute yourself and go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm saying the first thing that you're asking about whether or not I deny or not, first of all, I'm not on the ground. I'm not in the hospitals. We saw the video that the IDF released from the hospital. And honestly, I'm a Palestinian and Israeli citizen together. And I say it as an Israeli citizen that I expect to see more of what actually is going on in these hospitals from the video that was released. But honestly, we don't need these videos in order to realize that Hamas has no interest to protect the civilians of Gaza Strip. Hamas leaders outside of Gaza said so themselves in their own mouths. I don't understand why we need to have this argument whether or not Hamas is seeking the interest of the people, because it clearly said, when asked what is it doing with the tunnels and why not a single tunnel was made. If you are a militant group and you're fighting against a state, one of your strategies must be to find one way to protect your own people. But when you say that the responsibility of the people of Gaza is not yours, it's only Israel and the international community, how are you fighting for these people if you don't even see them as part of your own personal responsibility? So that's the question that we have today. But I think the argument that is happening in the media, whether or not Israel is justified to attack and whether or not the Palestinians are justified to resist, it's all a question of morality, to be honest. It's the media feeding the voices of pro-Israelis and pro-Palestinians with the voice and speakers that will give them what they want to hear in order to justify their moral ambiguity of, is it okay that I'm pro-Palestinian? Is it okay that I'm pro-Israeli? And how can I justify that? And we put people in order for them to argue and to show that one side, is more better than the other. What the world needs to do, what the whole international media and the international community as a whole needs to do, is to push for ending this conflict overall, not just this war. If we end this war tomorrow and we have a conflict in a few days, another war in 2 days, what did we do by that? We need a real call to end this conflict overall from the international community to put pressure on both sides that this is enough. It's the last time. This is the last straw.
Sure. And this has been going on for decades together. There has to be a long-term solution that we see, because more often than not, every time we saw a conflict happen there, it was brushed aside by many world powers, including the United States. But now the United States seems to be in a precarious position. I want to get in Adam Scott Bellows as well. As far as Israel and its ground offensive is concerned, up until now, we had all of its allies unequivocally defend the action. They said it was their right of self-defense, and Israel was within its right to do what they wanted. But now we have both the US cautioning and Justin Trudeau and Canada also coming out and saying that you cannot have civilians, especially infants and babies, being in the line of fire. Why do you think we're suddenly seeing this change in tone and tenor of allies? Are they sensing some sort of unease, perhaps, that the IDF, the Israeli government, may just cross the line?
I'm still just confused from the answer of the first gentleman. There was like a lot of words, but I didn't actually hear like a coherent thought in there, so I'm a little confused. I'm also a little confused as to why anybody cares what Justin Trudeau says at all, especially after the embarrassment that he's caused multiple times since the conflict has started. The State Department yesterday literally came out and changed their entire tune, saying instead of maybe asking Israel to avoid fighting near or inside of hospitals, maybe we should be asking Hamas to vacate those hospitals. Kind of seen, it's beautiful proof that terrorist infrastructure has been built. It's very clear that the safety and security of the Palestinian people were not up to speak. If that makes sense. Sorry, my camera kind of froze for a second, but I I don't really understand what the debate is here. There was a clear violation of international law and multiple war crimes committed on October 7th.
Yes.
Just in the beginning, it was just a violation of the ceasefire. So I don't really understand how or why we're still debating whether or not Israel should have done, could have done, or had the right to respond. I don't think anybody's changing their tune. It's actually quite clear that the international community, or at least the Americans at the very least, are quite clear that the theater of war in Gaza is wrapping up because Hamas's infrastructure is clearly crumbled. So,
Sure.
if we could just in this debate, if we could just stay in the realms of reality, that would be fantastic. I know. I would appreciate it.
Sure,
for my time's sake.
Sure, I understand where you're coming from, but it's not just Canada. We're also seeing, and there are reports suggesting that there is some sort of unease within the Biden administration as well. Hamas came out and said that it's Biden really that is, or America that should be held wholly responsible for what is transpiring at the hospitals in Gaza. There are reports that are suggesting that the United States is also under pressure from a lot of its Arab allies because they see that...
who cares what Hamas says?
Sure.
They started this war.
Sure.
So I don't really think the Biden administration really cares what Hamas says in terms of who's blood on their hands. There's one group.
But like I said, there are some Arab
7th.
allies as well and there are interests in the region for many of these countries, including the United States.
We saw Turkey call Israel a terrorist state yesterday. I don't think that anyone takes Turkey seriously, to be completely honest. It's not like they're, I mean, we are looking towards the end of the fighting of one front of this war. There's obviously always going to be public pressures that are done and different things that are done in the background as well. But I think one thing that has been made very clear and will become even more clear is how, what will become more clear is how many war crimes or double, triple, quadruple war crimes were committed, given the amount of civilian infrastructure we've now seen that Hamas's military wing has been embedded inside of. And not only that, there have been reports from the field that people are leaving their keys in their homes so that Hamas is able to enter their homes to hide. As well, there have been whole houses, from what I understand, that have been built on top of the entrances of these tunnels. And they're not actually houses. They're just entrances to look like they're civilian residences, but that are actually tunnel entrances. So
and those tunnels have been being built for the last few years, is what we're now learning. So there are questions that are being raised as to how Israel's intelligence failed to even look into that, if they've been building these tunnels below hospitals, below schools, below UN buildings for the past decade or so. But I want to get in Sushant Sareen as well, and we're talking about the larger ramifications of this. Just a few weeks ago, we had, just a few days ago, in fact, we had Benjamin Netanyahu go on to say that this is going to be a long-drawn war, and our aim is to finish it come what may. But at what cost are we going to see that? And for how long, in your opinion, is this going to be dragging on for?
Poonam, I think it's very difficult for anybody to say how long this is going to drag on for. It depends on how quickly, at least insofar as Hamas is concerned, the Israelis are successful in degrading them and eliminating these guys, finishing off this organization. I think that will be the critical measure, because that is the objective which Israel has set for itself. But look, I've always maintained that Hamas at the end of the day is not just an organization, it's a mindset, it's an ideology. And I think one of the greatest failures of the Western world since 9/11, and even before that, in fact, before that they were in denial, but post 9/11, I think the greatest failure of the Western world has been that they simply haven't understood the phenomena which they are up against. And Hamas is only a manifestation of that jihadist phenomena which is sweeping through the world, in large parts of the world actually. So I don't know what we are going to do about that, because at the end of it, a lot of the problems in the Middle East emanate from this particular poisonous ideology, and nobody has done anything to address it. Nobody has done anything to dismantle it. You can dismantle an organization. How do you dismantle that ideology? Until you fight it. And when I look at the Western world and the discourse in the Western world, and also the division within the Western world between what's happening on the street and what's happening in the corridors of power, just as we see that in the Arab world, where I disagree with you, Poonam. I think bulk of the Arab world is not very unhappy about the treatment that is being meted out to Hamas. There might be some disquiet on, on how the war is being prosecuted, on whether there are going to be too many civilian casualties or collateral damage. But I think most Arab states are very happy to see the back of Hamas. It's the Arab street there is a dissonance between the Arab states and the Arab street. Forget Turkey. Turkey is not important. Forget Canada. I think Justin Trudeau is a travesty of a leader. But in bulk of the Western countries, I think there is an understanding that you have to get rid of organizations like Hamas. But I don't think there's sufficient recognition on how do you address that ideology, which we see play out on the streets of many of these Western countries.
Right, and I want to get in Edward P. Joseph as well. Like Sushant Sareen was pointing out, and many other experts would also say that a lot of this is because Western powers have failed to see the inherent issue here. They sort of glossed over it for decades together, which is why we've reached the point that we've reached here. Would you agree?
Well, first, let me say good to be with you, the other guests, and your viewers as well. And let me return to your original question, which are allies now changing tune, as I see the streamer across the screen. And I would agree with those speakers who said no, actually. They're not changing their tune towards this. Let me just, as I'm here in Washington, try to interpret the Biden administration position. President Biden, Secretary of State Blinken, anyone, any of us who is a human being with any heart has to be deeply troubled, first by the suffering of Palestinian civilians and, of course, by the prospect of innocents in a hospital being caught in a crossfire, as the administration has cautioned, and this heartbreaking situation for Palestinian babies. And that's any normal sentient human being has to have that concern. And so President Biden and the State Department are reflecting that in their messaging and their messages to Israel. At the same time, they're very aware of reality. And this is the larger question here is, if we are concerned, as we should be, about Palestinian suffering and ensuring the safety of Palestinians, the question is who bears the responsibility for that? And obviously Israel does have responsibility, but not sole responsibility. That's the key point here, and that's what the United States is conveying. And we heard that from the State Department spokesman in very clear terms, saying, what about Hamas's responsibility here? And why didn't Hamas accept the offer from Israel to provide fuel directly for the hospitals, and stating very clearly, the State Department spokesman stating yesterday that Hamas should vacate the hospitals. And let's remind your viewers here that to use a hospital as a site for military operations by Hamas, this is under the Geneva Conventions, this is formally a war crime. And that does not mean, of course, that Israel has no responsibility. And that's what the United States is trying to remind Israel, that this is a very difficult, complex dilemma.
Yes.
So everyone, of course, has to be concerned about the Palestinians in those hospitals. At the same time, the U.S. has not moved away. So it's not true there's a change in tone. The U.S. has not moved away from holding Hamas accountable here. And ultimately, we want to see this fighting and suffering end. It's actually not very complicated. Not complicated at all. Hamas only has to release the hostages and leave. The leadership leave. And there are prominent Israeli voices who say that ends the war. Not just this situation at the hospital, that ends the war. please.
Yes, because many of those hostages are also foreign nationals. It's been 5 weeks and there's been absolutely no news. We had reports coming in of a prisoner swap kind of a deal that Hamas wanted with Israel, because they claim that a lot of Palestinians are in Israeli jails. Israel says they're all there because they have been found guilty on charges by the law in Israel, something that Hamas may not be okay with. But that does not give you the license to kill, to attack innocents, to take hostages. And Ibrahim Abu Ahmad, I want to get you in on that as well. The very cause of the Palestinian people, don't you think that is Hamas is actually betraying that very cause by putting them in harm's way, by using them as human shields?
I mean, you're repeating the same question, I think, and trying to like make the Arab voice that says that Hamas is against the Palestinians. I've already clarified that point. But I think the problem is beyond just what Hamas does. It's clear. We mentioned it. We say it. Hamas is not helping the Palestinian people in that way. Hamas has, and by the way, it's something that every rebel group that doesn't have a state, it has different tools, by the way, to fight against the state, and in order to establish its own identity, including illegitimate ones, including things that are unacceptable, in my opinion, as a peace activist, as terror attacks. But that's a tool that we've seen throughout the world. Ask our Jewish partners on this call what the Haganah did in Jerusalem in 1946.
I don't think that you can compare anything that the Haganah did to anything that happened on October 7th. That's absolutely no.
Mr. Bellows, I'll come back to you. Mr. Bellows, I'll come back to you and let Mr. Ahmad finish his point. I'll come back to you.
As I said, I believe the use of terror in any way, shape, or form is unacceptable. And the use of terror will not help the Palestinian people. Point blank. It will not help our people. It will not help the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It will not improve the situation. Terror will bring more horrors and terror. And actually, in fact, it will only put Palestinians in a worse situation. Because every time we saw violence, there were a reduction of two main things for the Palestinian people: rights and land. We as a Palestinian people, we need to make a change. We need to change. We need to make a decision. What do the Palestinian people want? And in order to achieve it, what are the right and legitimate tools to do it? Terror hasn't worked, and terror will not work. We need compromise.
Sure, I'm running short of time, but Mr. Bellows, I want you to have 30 seconds to rebut.
Before the point my colleague wanted to interrupt me on is that terror has been used in the past.
Not your problem.
That it has been used.
Sure, I get the point you're trying to make.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm running out of time, so I want Mr. Bellows to have his time to rebut. Yes, go ahead.
Actually, after over 100 years, now you guys need to make up your mind as to what you want, because you haven't actually figured out what you wanted. I'm just very confused, because the armed struggle for the last 100 years has been a total failure. Like you said, I mean, like, do you not want a state? Is this something
I want a two-state solution, my friend.
Okay, so you want a two-state solution, right? So and all the other times where you think now,
I always want
that
a
after
two-state
the
solution.
rejection of right. No. It's not about you wanting one or me wanting one or not wanting one.
There were seven different. Never fully wanted a two-state solution.
That is, I'm sorry. There were seven different opportunities. I'm sorry. There were seven different opportunities to accept a state and to become economically independent. But the thing is that you guys have never.
Both sides did not take the chance.
I'm sorry, but like,
in order to reach peace, but to
single
put it on one
opportunity
side
has
is
been handed-
unacceptable. The only prime minister
It's
who
not
was
about
killed
one side
was
or another.
Israeli prime minister
Okay.
by a Jewish extremist, not a Palestinian.
Okay,
I'm
great.
sorry.
That
The
has
one
no- but
person
that has
who
nothing
stopped
to
us
do
for
with
the
it.
peace treaty. It was we need to do it.
I'm sorry. The assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, if anything, allowed the peace process to be pushed for another 15 years, and is the reason why Bibi was unable to pull out of the peace treaty. I'm sorry. No,
we cannot have a tit-for-tat situation. We cannot have civilians that are put in the crossfire every single time. There cannot be a tit-for-tat situation, irrespective of what happens. Unfortunately, I'm completely out of time. I have to leave it at that. But I thank you all, gentlemen, for joining us here on this broadcast and sharing your perspective. We do have to shift our focus on this edition of The Right Stand. And this is something that's happening much closer home to India. That is Pakistan and China, who are holding the third edition of its naval exercise. It's the Sea Guardian 3. This time, they have increased its scope exponentially, is what they say. The exercise will see China and Pakistan conduct joint maritime patrols for the very first time. Now, this is a 9-day drill in the Arabian Sea. It will conclude in 2 days from now. China and Pakistan are fair weather allies. They're enhancing their defense cooperation. It specifically works well for China, who's trying to consolidate its presence in the Indian Ocean. The drill will include several training programs. It includes formation maneuvering. It includes something called VBSS. It means visit, board, search and seize a ship if needed. Helicopter cross-deck landing, joint search rescue, joint anti-submarine operations, main gun shooting and professional exchanges will also be witnessed during this time. The two countries are aiming to strengthen their strategic partnership and traditional friendships. They're trying to send a message to New Delhi at a time when India is emerging as a global world leader. So what do China and Pakistan hope to achieve, and should India be concerned? We'll get our experts to weigh in on that, but first let's look at some facts. What has transpired over the last 5 days? This is a week-long exercise. China is showing off its military strength. Here's a look at the capacity of military assets that have been deployed by China for this exercise at the Karachi port. Beijing has sent a destroyer. There are 2 modern frigates, a conventional attack submarine and a submarine support ship as well for the Sea Guardian 3. First up is the destroyer Zibo. It was commissioned in 2020. It is capable of striking at adversaries in the air, on surface and even underwater. It's considered among the world's biggest and most capable destroyers. Zibo is equipped with a single 130mm gun and 5 different types of radars. It has a vertical launch systems. It can fire cruise, anti-ship and anti-submarine missiles. The destroyer is manned by at least 280 crew members. Now, China has also deployed 2 of its most deployed frigates around the world. They're also participating in this particular exercise. These frigates are known for their versatility, for their cost effectiveness, and they're fitted with advanced weapons and sensors. For anti-submarine operations, the frigate is equipped with 2 6-tube rocket launchers as well. It can also support a single medium-sized helicopter on it. Now, the Chinese flotilla that is at the Karachi port is also comprising a submarine support vessel. It's touted as the most comprehensive rescue vessel. It is attached to the PLA's Northern Theatre Command. Along with these vessels is China's first indigenously built diesel-electric powered Type 039 submarine. This is what we're gathering from reports. Global Times is reporting this. From the Pakistani side, there are several that have been deployed, including 9 vessels. It includes the PNS Shah Jahan and PNS Saif. 3 shipborne helicopters, 4 fighter jets, 1 fixed-wing anti-submarine patrol aircraft, and dozens of Marines from the Pakistani side are involved in this exercise. Now, this exercise is, as far as the Indian context is concerned, is very, very important because of the location of it. The exercise is taking place very, very close to the India's western seaboard. While this is not the first time that the two countries are involved in such a joint exercise, the deployment of assets is crucial in the current geopolitical situation. Sources within the Ministry of Defense here in India have told us that they are monitoring the movement of the Chinese ships and submarines that are participating in this exercise and will look into it further. But should India be worried? Well, there are several concern areas. One, to begin with, is that China and Pakistan both want to contain the Indian influence. India is emerging as a global power in multiple platforms. As far as multiple sectors are concerned, that definitely does unnerve both those allies. Another area of concern is that both these nations are seeking to create a strategic buffer as far as trying to push India into a corner or sandwich India into the middle is concerned. Both of them are known for their misadventures as well. They both hope to launch fresh territorial challenges to India. Another big concern would be that this is the largest naval drill that we've seen yet between the two countries. China's modernization and enhancement of Pakistan's navy is also a reason for concern. China is going to be equipping Pakistan, as has been already doing so, with much more as far as its military arsenal is concerned. Clearly, the high seas are a topmost priority for Pakistan and for China, and their obvious goal really is to mount a bigger challenge in the Indo-Pacific region. New Delhi will have to be wary. And that's the second debate here on The Right Stand. Joining me on this broadcast is Sushant Sareen. He continues with us from debate number 1, senior fellow at the ORF. Major General retired Sanjay Meston, defense expert, also joining us here on this broadcast. Major General Meston, I want to get you in first. And my question is simple. Should India be worried?
Yeah, absolutely. India needs to be worried for only 2 reasons. Firstly, this is the largest exercise conducted in the recent time. The first exercise was conducted in 2000 on the Arabian Sea and thereafter in the Shanghai coast, and this time it is here. But this time the number of ships participating are very, very big, 9 and 6, total 15 ships from each side. 9 is of the Pakistan side and 6 ships are from China. So that is point one. It is the largest, and number two is that this time they are going in for anti-marine capabilities and also the joint recce surveillance. So this is a matter of concern, and the fact of the matter is, since it is in Arabian Sea, so obviously it is a matter of concern. But to put it the other way, these are regular exercises. India also holds exercise. We have also done with the ASEAN countries and with the United States in South China Sea in the Pacific Ocean. So these are quite routine and regular exercise, but this time the magnitude and the intent, that is little difference. And the fact of the matter is that in the longer run, I also foresee that China will extract something out of these exercises, because its long-term strategic aim would be to dock certain of its ships at the Gwadar port after the CPIC is totally formalized. So this would be one of its aim, and its hold in Arabian Sea on the Indian Ocean will increase, Chinese hold, because they already have a naval base in Djibouti. So all these things definitely become a matter of concern for the Indian Navy, and you rightly pointed out, we have no option but to monitor, and obviously we'll also resort to more large-scale exercises in the future with other countries. So yes, the matter of concern is there, and we'll be monitoring.
Yes, and the timing may be a coincidence, Sushant Sureen, but we just had the 2+2 dialogue as far as India and the United States is concerned. The Indo-Pacific region, our security in the region, the defense cooperation between the two countries was high on agenda. And on the back of this, we see this major naval exercise being undertaken by Pakistan and China, both countries known for their misadventures as far as India is concerned.
That's true, Poonam. See, the thing is that, both the 2+2 as well as these exercises would not have been done overnight. And obviously there is an element of signaling, diplomatic and strategic signaling, which is there behind, these exercises. Also, insofar as the magnitude of these exercises is concerned. At another level, we've held even bigger exercises with countries like the US under the Malabar, exercise, which we hold every year, and those exercises bring in carrier battle groups and all kinds of other ships. So we've also held those exercises, but there is a critical difference when we hold exercises with countries like the US, Australia, Japan, and the Pakistanis and the Chinese hold a joint exercise. There is an element of collusion between these two countries. They are military allies, and there is an apprehension. Forget apprehension. There is almost a certainty that both of them will act together when it comes to a military misadventure, especially when it's aimed against India. So when these two guys carry out any kind of exercise, it does, and it should set alarm bells ringing in India. I think we would be monitoring these exercises. I would imagine that we would also be trying to take some kind of countermeasures to the kind of collusion that we expect to happen between both these countries. We must also not forget that China's footprint in the Indian Ocean, not only the eastern side of the Indian Ocean, but also the western side of the Indian Ocean, is gradually increasing. I think General Meston talked about the base in Djibouti. There is a very serious apprehension that Gwadar or one of the other bases along the Makran coast in Pakistan could be handed over to China as a quid pro quo, because Pakistan simply can't pay back the debts. And then there is an apprehension of the new government in Maldives giving another base or basing facilities to the Chinese along straddling the sea lanes. And if that happens, then clearly China becomes a major player in this region. So yes, it becomes a major strategic challenge for us. And the Indian Ocean is now fast becoming extremely crowded because there are other extra-regional powers also which are present out here. And they would also be responding to the challenges that the Chinese are going to throw. And the strategic game in the Indian Ocean region is becoming a lot more complex than what it was maybe a decade or more back.
Yes.
And then, of course, it's not just about what the China-Pakistan collusion is in the maritime domain, but it's also there as far as the land domain is concerned. And we are seeing a lot of that also take place. But I think India would be remiss if it was not to take these exercises very seriously and with a great amount of concern, and perhaps also work out the kind of countermeasures if this collusion becomes much more operational than what it is right now.
Yes. And we're talking about the growing presence as far as China is concerned, Major General Meston. We were talking about the different, both on the eastern and the western front, the string of pearls that China is really trying to do with all of the ports that we're seeing in this region. They're also not just training and not just holding these drills with Pakistan, but they're also trying to modernize the Pakistan armed forces, so to say. And it works on multiple levels for China, isn't it? One, of course, is to protect its interests as far as the CPEC project is concerned, but it's also to try and give them a backup flank, so to say, as far as the Indian Ocean is concerned, where India's presence definitely is growing. The Indo-Pacific region is concerned.
Yeah, very true. And therefore, what these exercises are also encompassing is the modernization of the Pakistan Navy, especially. We are aware even Turkey has recently given them submarines and frigates. And especially China, they are also doing joint collaboration of working of the Agor class submarine, which again, I think the Chinese interest, not only strategic interest, they also have the sales interest. Obviously, they would like to sell all their frigates and destroyers to Pakistan, and we are aware that recently they had just given 4 of the guided missile destroyers also. So it has got that interest also, and therefore modernization is one of the important facets. And I think in the near future I also foresee that not only the bilateral exercises between Pakistan and China, I think in the near future we can also see Turkey joining in. And Turkey in the even this Middle East conflict has been making a lot of noises, and somehow it is going little anti-West in its rhetoric. So therefore I feel that, and Turkey is never have been aligned to India in any manner. Both of us were in Afghanistan, so we know that also, how Turkey has tried to make inroads in Pakistan, and Pakistan and Turkey has got very good relationship.
Yes.
So we should not be surprised in the near future these 3 nations would also look for modernization, for having a lot of inroads in Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal. And therefore, to that intent, modernization would be one of the important aspects which the Pakistan Navy would really like to go ahead, because it's getting support from China, it is getting support from Turkey. And I think Turkey is also resorting to making in joint collaboration certain of the ships here. And I think just about few months back, Turkey had given them the ships.
Yes.
So the Agor class submarine of China, which again has been a joint production, and it is being produced in both the countries. So this has also got the diplomatic and the business point of view.
Yes.
So the sales would increase, and Pakistan Navy definitely is heading towards modernization. And even in this exercise, they are also talking about cross landing of the helicopters on each other's deck. So this is again going to be something of interest. So the collaboration which Mr. Sushant has also highlighted, these are all matters of concern, and this
Absolutely,
time...
and I'm sure at the highest levels here in India, we're all being wary of what exactly is transpiring, and we're more than equipped to deal with any of these circumstances spiraling out of control if they do. But I do have to leave it at that. I thank you both gentlemen for joining us here on this broadcast and sharing your perspective. With that, it's time for a quick break here on this edition of The Right Stand. But on the other side, we're getting you a super exclusive. It's the David Beckham interview. Do not miss that.
Hello, Moto.
Co-powered by
After the relief that people of the national capital got just a few days ago after light spells of rains had engulfed the national capital, which meant that the AQI had come down significantly and was hovering in the poor category. Now post Diwali, we are seeing that the AQI has again deteriorated. Currently, I am reporting from Kartavyapath, and just move to the frame and try and show you in the visuals over here that another layer of smog has yet again engulfed the national capital. But remember, this is not only smog, but what experts are saying that there is element of fog that is also in these visuals that you are seeing on your screens right now. So yes, the AQI has deteriorated after Diwali, but remember the AQI was already in the severe category at least 2 to 3 days ago, and today as well the AQI is still hovering within the very poor to poor category, but yet it is still very difficult for people to breathe out here. Remember the manner in which the Supreme Court orders of not bursting any sort of crackers was flouted yesterday. There were several cases that were seen out here in the national capital where this order of the Supreme Court of not bursting any sort of cracker was definitely flouted. In fact, the fire department itself had got more than 100 calls till 10 p.m. itself. So it actually shows that the people of the national capital, in fact, the majority of the people of the national capital were actually not bursting crackers, but yes, there was a significant number who were seen flouting these norms and bursting crackers, because of which we are seeing that the AQI has yet again deteriorated out here in the national capital and is yet again in the very poor category. Now today, the prediction from the IMD is that once the sun is out, the wind speeds are likely to pick up and these pollutants would yet again be washed away. And that is the only silver lining for the people out here in the national capital. But remember, over the next few days as well, the AQI is likely to remain in the poor to very poor category, and in fact is likely to deteriorate yet again in the severe category as well because of the wind directions. Now what remains to be seen is to what new plans can the Delhi government and the Delhi administration make sure that they initially make, and make sure that is implemented on the ground to the T, so that some sort of immediate relief can be provided to the people out here in the national capital who have been suffering from this deteriorating air quality for at least the last 10 days. Currently, I am reporting from the pollution hotspot out here in the national capital, that is the Anand Vihar bus terminal, and if I could just show you in the visuals around here, the visibility is not as bad as it was expected. The AQI out here in the national capital remains to be in the very poor category, although the measures of GRAP 4 has been implemented, but yes, the manner in which the order of the Supreme Court of not bursting crackers was flouted by several people out here in the national capital, that has made sure that the AQI deteriorates yet again. But if you compare the AQI that is today, the very next day post Diwali, with the yesteryears, you can actually see that the AQI is not as bad as it was expected, and in fact it has somewhere or the other been better than what it was last year at this time around. Also, what we have seen that yes, there were several people who had flouted the norms and had gone ahead and busted crackers through the night on the day of Diwali. But yes, today the AQI has definitely deteriorated, but it is not as bad as it can be seen. On the other hand, we have seen a lot of politics that has already started to happen in this entire matter. The opposition leaders are already coming on record and putting blame on the BJP leaders, because they were the people who instigated people to go ahead and burst these crackers. So yes, the political blame game has already started. But if you speak about the AQI has definitely deteriorated post Diwali, but it is not as bad as it was over the last many years right after the day of Diwali. Currently I am reporting from Akshardham temple, where I could just show you in the visuals around here that yet again today cloud of smog has yet again engulfed the national capital. Remember, over the weekend we saw that there were spells of rain, which meant that the AQI in the national capital had improved significantly. But post Diwali, yet again we are seeing that the AQI in the national capital has yet again deteriorated. The main reason behind this is being said to be the manner in which the norms were flouted by the residents of the national capital even after the orders of the Supreme Court, which meant that there was a blanket ban on bursting of any sort of crackers. That was flouted significantly out here in the national capital, and that is the reason why we are seeing that the AQI out here has yet again deteriorated. Over the next few days, the IMD predicts that the AQI might improve due to the wind conditions, but if you look at the longer run over the next 1 week, the AQI is yet again going to get back into the severe category, which means that it is yet again going to be a troublesome time for the people out here in the national capital region, where yet again they would be
He's a legend on and off the field, one of the greatest footballers of our times. He's driving change around the world. and he's doing it all in style. As the fans at Old Trafford once famously chanted, there is only one David Beckham, and he's sitting right in front of me on his maiden visit to India. David, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
David, you've come down for a very special cause. You've been a Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF since 2005, and you have worked with children in particular about breaking barriers down for them. Tell us about the work that has brought you here to India.
You know, obviously, firstly, thank you for having me in this beautiful country. I have wanted to come to India for a long, long time, and for some reason, I've just never been able to make it happen. But this is my first time, and it's been an incredible experience so far. You know, everybody has welcomed me with open arms, and obviously, there's a lot of fans here that follow. You know, have followed my career over the years, and
yes, you're looking at one of them right now.
It's a real pleasure to be here, and obviously to be here at an important time as well. You know, obviously to be here over Diwali and obviously the New Year, and also the Cricket World Cup. So it's a good time to come, but also it's been a trip that I've been looking forward to for a long time. You know, my role as Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF, the one thing that I've always enjoyed is being in the field and being there with the kids and seeing their situations and seeing the progression that's happened, but being part of their lives for that time. And for me, it's an important trip for that. And I've seen and met so many great young children, you know, and a lot of young girls that are striving for change. And that tells me that something great and good and progression is happening here in India, but there's still a lot to be done, and there's a lot of good people around that are partnering with UNICEF and championing for change as well. So this trip is an important one for me. It's the first time I've been back in the field since COVID.
So 3 years.
Yeah, so this is an important one, and also one that I've been looking forward to for a long time.
That's wonderful to hear. Breaking barriers for children when it comes to gender inequality, violence, bullying. You've been associated with this for a very long time.
Yeah.
What drew you to this in the first place?
I've always cared about children's futures. It's something that I've always been passionate about. You know, my work with UNICEF began when I was 17 years old. I was on tour with Manchester United in Thailand, and I went to a women's centre. And that's where my first involvement began. Then I became Global Ambassador in 2015. And then we focused, and we will always focus on children in general, boys, girls. But our focus changed because whenever I went on a field trip, I would see that young girls were getting left behind. I would see that they were treated differently. I could see that they wasn't getting the same opportunities as boys, you know, and I've seen that, you know, in the last couple of days. You know, we all know the issue with girls getting forced, young girls getting forced into marriage, and those moments in a child's life, you know, where they're getting taken out of their education system, you know, that is bad for their future. It's bad for their brothers and sisters' future to see that and to know that is happening. So those are the important moments where we need to change the mindset of people, and you just need to ask the kids what they want. You know, I spoke to a couple of the young girls yesterday, and I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they was like, I want to be a teacher. So that tells me something good is happening in these care centres. It shows me that something is happening in these communities. You know, these young girls are standing up. You know, I spoke to a young girl again yesterday that was 9 years old, that when I said to her about her situation at her home and with her family, you know, the discussion of going into an early marriage was a discussion that had already happened. She then was able to stand up to her father and say, no, this is what I want, Daddy. This is what I want for my future. I want to complete my education. And that's a brave decision for a 9-year-old girl to stand up against her father. And luckily her father listened. Not every father does listen. So, you know, there's one girl in a community that is making a change that then affects other people in the community, because then with her father's generous mindset of believing in his daughter, he then can go to other fathers and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is what your daughter's future is going to be. So those kind of things are so important. And we all know, the population of children in India is the biggest, 460 million children here. 1 in every 5 children in the world is in India. And we know when India progresses, the whole world progresses with them. So that is why it's so important.
You mentioned the Cricket World Cup. You've come at an interesting time.
I know.
You know what a big deal cricket is in a country like India. Football has also been picking up. We have our own football league. How do you think sports like cricket or football can drive change in children?
I've always said that sport is one of the most powerful tools of change. And I've seen that over the years, whether it be in Thailand, whether it be in different parts of Europe, in South America, I've seen how sport can change, and specifically football, because that's where my upbringing is from. I've seen that the moment that I go into one of these villages in towns that don't have TVs, that don't have radios, but you take a football into this village and these kids' faces, they light up. And it's the same with cricket here. It's such a powerful tool. There's so many cricketers, men, women, where these young kids are looking up to and wanting to be them and wanting to follow everything that they do. That's why it's such an important role for sportsmen, sportswomen to have that opportunity to have a platform where they can speak out, where they can, be part of change. And I've seen, when I play football with these kids, whether it be 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 2 hours, whatever situation they're in around the world, they forget about it. Unfortunately, they have to go back to that situation. But for that time, it tells you how powerful, the sport is. It breaks down barriers. It gives children confidence. It gives them a foundation for what they can take into their lives.
All right, I'm getting to the last round of rapid fire questions.
Okay.
I'm just going to fire some questions that you just think of the first thing that comes to your head.
Okay.
In that case. One footballer who's caught your eye recently.
Jude Bellingham.
India, New Zealand, South Africa or Australia, who are you rooting for in this Cricket World Cup?
Well, obviously, I'm going to have to say India.
That's a safe answer that you're going with right now. Beekeeper or an artist? What is an alternate profession for you?
Beekeeper.
Beekeeper?
Beekeeper.
What is the next tattoo that you're going to be getting?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I used to get my inspiration from my travels, so maybe I'll get one from this trip.
Oh, wow. And you've had many hairstyles over the years, but what's the one hairstyle that you regret?
None.
None, absolutely.
There's somewhere I look back and I think, what was I thinking? But majority of them I'm okay with because it was okay at the time.
Yeah, that was a trick question that I asked anyway. And the last one, out of Brooklyn, Romeo, Cruz or Harper 7, which of your kids can really bend it like Beckham?
Actually, they're all pretty good at playing football and playing sports, but Romeo is the only one at the moment that is part of a team. My son Brooklyn is obviously, he likes photography or cooking. My daughter is obviously the boss, and my other son Cruz, he loves music, so we'll see.
It's been a pleasure, David Beckham. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you more often in India now.
Me too. I can't wait to come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
RP Sanjeev Goenka Group presents CNN News 18 Indian of the Year 2023. And the nominees for the entertainment category are Shah Rukh Khan, Mani Ratnam, Sunny Deol, Deepika Padukone, Manoj Bajpayee. Vote now on www.indianoftheyear.com and choose the Indians conquering the world.
must not, should not use a place like a hospital as a shield for their presence.
Based on intelligence information and an operational necessity, IDF forces are carrying out a precise and targeted operation against Hamas in a specified area in the Shifa hospital.
Hello, welcome to Brass Tacks. It's been over 40 days since this war between Israel and Hamas began. Right now, much of the focus of the battlefield seems to be around the Al-Shifa hospital, which is the biggest hospital in Gaza City. Israel says this is the de facto headquarters of Hamas, that Hamas has tens of hundreds of tunnel networks underneath the hospital, and the entire Hamas leadership is working from underneath that hospital. On the other hand, the Palestinians are saying that that's not the case. This is the biggest hospital. Not only is it treating patients who are in need of critical care, it is also taking care of prematurely born babies, pregnant women, that it is now, in the last month or so, become a big refugee camp for those who are fleeing the war and do not know where to go. What are the chances that Israel might actually go ahead and strike the hospital? There are firefights reportedly already taking place inside the compound. And beyond the current round of fighting, where does this story head? What happens to the day after this war is over? And what is the military objective that Israel has outlined? Is it achievable or not? And militarily, even if it achieves it, what happens diplomatically? What happens domestically? These are questions that we will be putting to Avi Hyman. He's an Israeli government spokesperson, somebody who is considered very close to the incumbent leadership there of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Thank you very much, Mr. Hyman, for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Let me start off by asking you about the current situation of the war. Much of the focus seems to be around the Al-Shifa hospital. What is it that you can share with our viewers as to what is the current status there? What is the intended operation? Because clearly there's a lot of pressure on Israel. In the international community, the United States are all saying that attacking a hospital would go against the Geneva Conventions. It would go against the rules of war. Can you tell us what is the focus of the Israeli government, particularly when it comes to the fighting around this hospital?
Firstly, let me thank you very much for having me on. And I want to just say to the people of India, thank you for your continued support, both on a government level and on a people-to-people level. We see your support, we feel your support, and we appreciate your support. We know that India has faced terror in the same way that Israel faces terror, and we thank you for your steadfast support. As far as what's going on today on the ground, it's an ongoing situation, so I can't speak to specifics. What I can tell you is the Al-Shifa hospital is home to Hamas's control and command center. Deep underground, Hamas built their command and control center. There, they have planned, they have initiated, and they have moved forward with the war as we see it. Over 10,000 rockets have been fired at Israel. We saw what happened on October 7th, the massacre, when their people plowed through our borders, going house to house, looking for Jews to kill, killing everyone in their path. They slit the throats of babies. They beheaded babies. They riddled babies' cribs with bullets. And now they are cynically saying to the world that we are coming after their hospitals, those same hospitals in which they have embedded their military